Welcome to Uncaged, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Julia Bardmesser. Hey, Julia, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm excited to talk to you, Julia. Julia's had an incredible 20-plus year career in the data architecture and CRM development space. She is a transformational leader. She sits on the editorial board of things like CDO Magazine, part of Voya, advisory board member for Polymer, and quite notably, actually, she is one of the founding members of Women in Data and AI, the WLDA. And so we'll talk about all of those things today. But Julia, before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
So it's a long one at this point. So I started as a developer, and really not well-known company back then called Bloomberg. They hired me out of college. I was the development group was about 90 people at that time. Of course, I never heard the name. I was only 2 years into the country, so I really had no idea. And that's how I came into technology and how I became a developer. And I stayed a developer for about 10, 15 years. And then I moved into management in Freddie Mac. And one of the things I realized as I moved into management and I started managing my first data team was that I don't like wasting development effort. So every single job I have, I end up building something reusable and enterprise. Even if I'm hired to do something very specific, what I end up building becomes an enterprise-wide capability. A lot of it is around data, but it's also around technology capabilities, architecture. You have it or around business processes we've built in Citi around Chief Data Office. It was geared mostly around finance, compliance, and regulators, but became company-wide capability around business information management. So that's kind of, I don't like to waste effort, and it all becomes a platform.
I like that. I mean, I think a lot of developers like that as well. People hate wasting things. And man, I mean, anybody who's developed any product, they see that classic situation that happens where, there's a new CTO, a new chief product officer, and they want to start from scratch. They're always like, oh, okay. But I mean, Julia, you worked on so many amazing things. Tell me a little bit about the stuff that you're most passionate about right now.
So a lot of my passion comes around how you use technology and data to transform the business. And how do you use it for growth for the business? So, and like my career the last 10 years, especially around this attention to data and data management, moved from moving data mostly for defensive, meaning regulatory purposes, and also to bring efficiency, to really use data to leverage and how to grow the company. So a lot of my passion and a lot of what I've done in the last 5 years and where I'm focusing right now is how do you enable it? How do you get it really clear across all efforts on the parts of both business people and technology people? How do you use data and analytics to really accelerate and scale the companies? And it goes from all the way, startups that I'm advising to companies like or places like WLDA. It's also how do you use that, and of course enterprises that I've worked with.
So it's a really interesting point, Julia. I mean, to work on those areas and to get companies to embrace that data and analytics. And we hear the topic of data everywhere these days.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about where you think we are. I mean, where are we in that journey of getting companies to truly embrace this stuff?
So we're actually in a pretty good place. So I've been in data for a long time, and I still remember a business person in Freddie Mac telling me that I have a really unenviable job because people only notice what I do when it doesn't work. It's like phone service. And of course, they changed with the financial crisis. And when the regulators pushed a lot of financial institutions to really look at their data and be able to prove where the data is coming from and how it's been used and how their results rest on actual information that they have in the bank and not on multitude of adjustments nobody understands. So since then, again, a lot from financial perspective, and majority of my career was in the financial services, moved on of trying to use the capabilities they've built to respond to regulators to at least get efficiencies. So, and get much more efficient, better margins in producing whatever products they were producing, of products or services. And where we are right now, and that's, I think it's accepted in majority of the businesses, be it the new fintech businesses or kind of all the more established companies, that data analytics is a driver for growth. So it's not really something that I have to argue anymore in any of the conversations. I think where we still need to go is the step from high level of understanding that data analytics is important, and we need to bring a new chief data officer, chief data analytics officer, or however you want to call that position, on how does that permeates the whole business, not only what chief data officer team does, or how executives talk to people in those positions and in that group, but how it permeates the rest of the company, marketing, product development, the rest of the technology.
I can only echo that thought. The permeation and kind of the holistic permeation, truly getting it through the whole organization is tricky, especially when several parts of a company have to provide data, right? And so making sure that it stays up to date and is consistent is always the challenge. So it's I think that there's still this idea that you invest in Salesforce and suddenly it all works.
Oh yeah, there is always an idea that you invest in some kind of tool and there is magic. That there is a little bit still of this magical thinking that, you know, we're going to bring a new chief data officer, or we're going to create a data analytics team, especially around data analytics team. Funnily enough, a lot of companies still do that because data science is so cool. And of course, we want to use data analytics and data to grow our company. So we're going to go ahead and hire data science people, but we will not hire data management team. So you have people, data science, that are trying to use the data that's actually not usable for them yet, because it cannot be reconciled. You don't know where it's coming from. It's all over the place. You don't know where it is. And then you hire a really expensive data science team and they spend 90% of their time looking for data. So I see that quite a bit. And every time sometimes I see positions come in my way. And when I see that, I go, oh, have you considered hiring a data management person first? So that happens quite a bit. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to develop, that notion of strategic data literacy, which is data literacy for business people, for business executives, and then all the way down through the organization and into the technology teams that aren't data teams, is again permeating the notion of how you deal with data and how does it specifically impact the growth, as opposed to that high level, you know, PowerPoint presentation. Data analytics are very important for us as a company.
Yeah, well, I love the idea of data literacy and trying to develop a stronger capability there that can support businesses. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about the last couple of years, because I think the pandemic has been a moment of transition for everybody. And I noticed a couple of things, Julia, that you worked on during the pandemic, most notably the WLDA, the Women Leaders in Data and AI. And it really caught my eye. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about the journey of the WLDA and how that may be linked in with the pandemic story.
Well, it's actually started with the pandemic. It started in the end of May of 2020, when we were all sitting in our, well, apartments in my case, and houses, and kind of not seeing people and feeling quite lonely. So Asha Saxena, who is the founder of WLDA, it was her idea to start with. She and I met a couple of months previously at a panel at the Columbia University. She teaches at Columbia. And we continued kind of getting together. And then she called me in the end of May and she said, look, I'm thinking of starting this organization for women leaders in data and AI to support each other. Of course, we're quite often, even now, now it's slightly less often, I tend to be the only woman in the room. When I sit, especially if I sit in some kind of executive meeting, and it does get lonely, and it's hard to find people to bounce ideas and ask for advice and just to share the experiences. So that was her idea, is to bring together really senior women in this space and create that support circle for us. So we can talk and share in complete confidentiality the issues that we face. And it could be anything, anywhere from what's happening at home, children, spouses, what's happening at work, and dealing with the politics and technology questions and all of that. And again, it's very confidential, and it's a group of women who've had very similar experiences. So there is a lot of experience share, and you learn things not only what went wonderfully. Of course, you can read up of all the things that go wonderfully. That's not a problem. It's the things that didn't work, that you have tried, that I've tried. So many things that I have tried in my life didn't work. And as a society, we're not very open to talking about failures.
Right.
But when you have that safe environment where you can share what you've tried and what worked really well and what didn't work, that's incredibly important for us. So we've been building that organization, and it's now over 100 people, and we do a lot of fun things, and it's been an incredible amount of support in my life.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea of bringing that community together. I think really there certainly seems to be a lot of activity in earlier age groups to support STEM and women in STEM. But I think what you're highlighting here is, senior leadership, women that have actually done a lot already in data and technology and AI, and working together is absolutely critical. And so, kudos to you in getting that going. And it's wonderful to see that community growing. But, Julia, let's put on your Nostradamus hat for a second and look at 2023. Here we are at the tail end of 2022. And, certainly we're right in the middle of this data transformation, I would say, that's happening in companies. Tell us a little bit about what you think is on the docket for 2023.
So I don't know how good I am at predicting what happens. So maybe you and I will talk in a year and we'll revisit the predictions and see what happens. So, well, the first one is pretty easy. I think this will continue. As you've said, COVID was a huge change for a lot of companies. So a lot of companies that may have been slow in getting much more digital presence are now on that journey. So there is a lot of digital transformations that happened because of COVID, because there were just no analog ways to get in touch. So I think that will continue a great deal. I think on the other hand, that all of that remote work, and I'm actually seeing some of it right now, is going to go much more towards hybrid direction, and people will start coming back to the offices more. Of course, I think while I've always been a fan of people working remotely as well, and I think it sometimes works incredibly well, I think we're also missing a lot of idea generation and the sense of a community that bringing together and just randomly seeing people when you're going to get coffee generates within the company. So I think there is going to be a little bit more of a gravity pull back into the offices, though I don't think we're going to 5 days a week anytime soon. And that's wonderful. Of course, I really wouldn't want to go, and I'm in New York. So for me, it's a subway, and the way I live, it's pretty easy to get pretty much anywhere. But still, I wouldn't want to do it 5 days a week. So I think that's another one. Another interesting thing that I see a lot of people forecasting recession. We kind of struggle with that. Of course, well, there is a war in Europe that's awful, and it impacts a lot of supply in terms of, not only lives, of course, of the people who are involved, but also in terms of economic experience. And we've had supply chain issues, and we've had inflation. but I still think that underlying economics foundations are strong enough where I'm hoping that we will not talk ourselves into recession.
Julia, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I think that would be a wonderful blessing if it happens in 2023. Certainly, I think the challenges that you highlighted, though, are quite real, primarily in Europe, I would say. The energy issues in Europe that we're seeing are acute, acute. I've been listening and talking to colleagues across Europe, and it's been quite cold there, and they're already having energy issues, just tremendous ones. So we'll see how this winter goes. But I mean, honestly, I think the general take is quite positive, and I can see a lot of these areas that we've been discussing continuing to grow. Julie, someone wanted to reach you and talk more about things like the WLDA that you're working on, or really any of these other areas any of these other businesses that you've touched in the past. Where's the best place to reach you?
LinkedIn would be the best place to reach me. I'm actually became much more active on Twitter recently. I've had friends who've been telling me that I should be more active on Twitter. And so now I think I finally got there. Though, who knows what's going to happen with Twitter, not making any predictions there.
Yeah.
But I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me.
Excellent. Well, Julia, thank you so much for being on Uncaged. We've been speaking with Julia Bardmesser. She has had an extraordinary career, really working at major financial companies like Bloomberg, but more recently at companies like Voya, being an advisor for companies like Polymer, being an editorial board member for the CDO magazine, and one of the founding members of the WLDA with the Women Leaders in Data and AI. Julia, thank you so much for shedding light on how things have evolved over the last couple of years, and we look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you, Ben. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Cheers.